Hello mortals, I am the BookTube Goddess, the #1 drag queen booktuber on YouTube. I finally got on the Gideon train. I skipped this book on Shelf It or Shove It, which I'll explain in a minute, but since then, several people have told me how epic Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir is. Gideon the Ninth was nominated for both the Hugo and the Nebula Awards, and I have to tell you that I could not put this book down. I was so enthralled by it that I immediately picked up the sequel, Harrow the Ninth. And I have no idea what I think of Harrow. I did not give it any stars on Goodreads because I have such mixed opinions, which I'll get to. But suffice to say, I am extremely conflicted about the sequel. Maybe I'll figure it out by the end of this review. Let's wait and see. But while you wait, why don't you go ahead and give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and don't forget to hit that notification bell. Okay, so let's talk about Gideon the Ninth. Why didn't I pick it for Shelf It or Shove It? The cover is gorgeous. It was one of my favorite covers, but then I read the blurb on the cover that kind of put me off. Lesbian necromancers explore a haunted Gothic palace in space. What? Lesbian necromancers? Haunted Gothic palace in space? In space? The book just sounded really silly to me, so I assumed it was a satire or fantasy humor, which is really hit or miss for me. And I just wasn't in the mood for a funny satire when I first saw this book. Anyway, since then I started seeing some booktubers talk about how great the book is, and a very good friend of mine said it was excellent. And then I saw it was nominated for both the Hugo and the Nebula and the World Fantasy Award. And it won the 2020 Locus Award for Best First Novel. Yes, it's a debut novel. Here's to you, Tamsin Muir. So anyway, I just had to read this book, and spoiler alert, it deserves every bit of praise that it has received, at least in my opinion. But first, what genre is it? What is it really? Because it's about necromancers and there are spaceships. The atmosphere kind of reminds me of Chronicles of Riddick, my favorite Van Diesel movie. And I don't usually like Van Diesel that much, though I like the actor because he is a huge D&D nerd. But his movies, but I loved Chronicles of Riddick.
Never fails to inspire, does it? Each time a world falls.
The Necromongers, a dark army that will convert or kill every last human life, unless they can be stopped. But sometimes, the only way to stop evil is not with good. You must confront it with another kind of evil.
Anyway, Gideon is one of those cross-genre novels where there are enough elements of both fantasy and science fiction that it should appeal to fans of either. Now the plot, or the setup briefly, is about our main character, Gideon. She is a woman trained as a warrior on a planet of religious zealots of the Ninth House. So what does that mean? Well, the Galactic Empire is ruled by the Necrolord Prime, and there are 9 planets or star systems, each ruled by a house of the necrolord, or of this empire. And the first house is the necrolord himself, Necrolord Prime. The second house is the military. The third house is art, and so on until you get to the ninth house, which is something of an anomaly, but their only purpose is to oversee a sacred tomb, so they kind of represent religion. And Gideon is raised as an orphan of the ninth house, and the ninth house is all sorts of screwed up. I mean, right from the get-go, it is apparent that things have been going tits up for some time in the ninth house, and Gideon wants nothing more than to escape, since she's basically treated like crap by everyone in this house. But the heir to the ninth house, a young woman about Gideon's age, and I think they're both around 18 years old, traps Gideon. And this woman's name is Harrow Hark. I want to say Hawk. I want to say Harrow Hawk. But anyway, it's Harrow Hark. And she's known as Harrow, and she's a necromantic prodigy. And her specialty is bones. She can shape bones, animate bones, do amazing things with bones. And she is summoned by the Necrolord Prime to go to the planet of the first house, along with the necromantic heirs from all the other houses, for some type of trial or competition to see if they are worthy to rise up to be lectors. And lectors are immortal, powerful necromancers who directly serve the Necrolord Prime. But each necromancer must come with their cavalier, or a warrior that they're paired with to protect them. So the trap is that the only way Harrow will allow Gideon to leave the ninth house is to serve her as her cavalier during these trials. And so they travel by spaceship to get to the first house, that planet, and they find the planet is mostly abandoned except for this Gothic palace / research facility. And there's all sorts of strange politics among the other houses that the ninth house isn't aware about because they're relatively isolated. And then there's this huge mystery surrounding what's going on. Okay, so that's the basic plot. And I thought it was some really original world building, in my opinion. I mean, it uses fantasy archetypes that are familiar enough that we don't get too lost in what's going on or developed. But there's this big mystery that you keep guessing about, and the stakes keep ramping up. So I thought this was a real page-turning book. Really good pacing. But that's not what makes this book great. What makes this book great is the narrator's voice. Now, this is written in third person, but in Gideon's voice. And by voice, I mean the humor, the sarcasm, the ennui, the personality of Gideon is in every observation and exposition that you read. And it is really an amazing writing voice, one that you don't see very often, and it makes you fall absolutely in love with this coarse, crass, stubborn woman. Here's to you, Gideon. Now, I think I know why it was written in the third person, but personally, I would have preferred if it was written in the first person. And one of the reasons is, and this is a minor quibble, is sometimes I got lost on who was speaking. There are a lot of characters. Every house has at least a pair of characters, a necromancer and a cavalier, and sometimes there's a lot of she said dialogues. She said yada yada, she said yada yada. And it got kind of repetitive, and sometimes I got confused as to who was speaking. And I kind of wish it was first person, so at least I could be immediately clued in when Gideon was speaking, or the central focus. Anyway, that's not a big thing, but it's something. As soon as I finished Gideon, I jumped right to the sequel, Harrow the Ninth. And I am still conflicted about it. I was hugely disappointed that it didn't have that wonderful narrator's voice, which I liked so much. In fact, I was pretty mad about it while reading through maybe the first third of the novel, because I kept thinking maybe that voice will come back, but it doesn't. There's also a lot of experimental writing, or at least experimental story development, which I don't want to get too much into because I don't want to give spoilers, but I found it kind of frustrating to read more than anything else. And a lot of this book is written in the second person for reasons I don't want to get into because of spoilers. But again, I thought that choice was more experimental than necessary. And what I found hard to forgive is that it didn't have a strong voice, nothing like what I liked so much in Gideon. Now, all that said, after finishing Harrow the Ninth, I do appreciate what the author did, and the ending was pretty amazing. I'm just not sure if it was worth it to get there. Again, I haven't given it a star rating on Goodreads because I waffle between 2 stars and 4 stars. What? I've never had such a reaction to a book, and it comes down to the expectations I built up based on reading the first book in the series. And they are 2 totally different books. So, I give Gideon the Ninth my blessing. I strongly recommend it just for the writing voice. It's that good. And for Harrow the Ninth, it was such a disappointment following Gideon that I have to zap it. But I also have to give it my blessing because I recognize that it's actually a very clever book. My warning is, if you fell in love with Gideon the Ninth and pick up Harrow the Ninth thinking the sequel will give you more of the same, you're going to be disappointed. Until we meet again, may all the books you read be blessed.